sky, would I grow wings? If I were trapped underwater, would I learn how to breathe? If I fell from the sky.
Well, welcome to Centered Students. We're in the middle of the Big Four, talking about the Gospels, and I'm so excited to be teaching on this, I'm going to talk about the book of Mark. And if I remember correctly, it's been a long time, but I think this is the first gospel I read kind of all the way through. And this gospel really focuses on the servanthood of Jesus Christ. And I love that because, it's kind of easy, at times to think about Jesus, he's God incarnate. He does all these incredible miracles, and he died on a Friday and rose from the dead on a Sunday, and that big picture of that is just so fascinating, and we get drawn into that. But Mark really starts to focus on the details of what Jesus was doing. Yes, he was healing people miraculously, but he was doing it with a heart of servanthood. He was serving the people he was coming in contact with. And even his followers, those disciples, those 12, he constantly was serving them. And we're going to focus on a little section in Mark where two of the disciples kind of pull him aside, and it was James and John, and they kind of, like, hey Jesus, when you come into glory, can we kind of be your right and your left hand guy? And it's funny because Jesus, he doesn't like freak out and rebuke them really. He just kind of starts to explain to them like, that's really not my decision to make. You need to realize that that's something that, Gentiles do. Like, these people that really don't know who God is, like, their kind of method for this is to, kind of gain leadership and then, lord it over people. And when we say lord it over people, we kind of mean, like have complete control over people for your own personal gain, or maybe for the gain of a small group of people. So that's not what Jesus is about at all. Jesus was totally about serving people. And so at the end of that passage, he says this. He says, even the Son of Man came to serve, not to be served. So he's saying even God incarnate came to serve and not to be served. And so that's this fascinating thing. And so that leads us into the big truth. And the big truth really is this. I kind of stated earlier, that leaders of the world, they lead in order to lord themselves over people, to gain personal wealth, to gain personal power. But followers of Jesus, when we're called into leadership, like I was called into worship ministry to lead a group of artists and musicians, I'm called in to serve them. And I deal with this every day. My goal is not to, boss people around and get them to do exactly what I want them to do. My goal is to help people become the best musician, the best artist, the best worship leader they can be. And so I serve the community that I work with, and it's such a blessing to have Jesus in me, leading me into that type of leadership. So that's the big truth. Worldly leaders serve for personal gain. Jesus followers lead in a heart of servanthood. And then the gospel connection is simply this. The book of Mark is all about the servanthood of Jesus. Like I said earlier, he died on a cross, a brutal death. He was shamed. He was spat upon. All people were just yelling nasty things at him as he was suffocating on a cross. He died, was buried, and on the third day he rose miraculously. And I love this. When he rose, he connected with his people again and still had the servant heart. And then he rose to be at the right hand of God the Father. But all throughout that, and even now, as he sits in glory, he still has a heart of serving us. And so it's just a beautiful thing that Jesus, God incarnate, is at the core a servant for his people, that he calls us to him and he serves us and he lifts us up on high, and and he draws us to him to then serve others. And so that's the gospel connection, and it's such a great story, and it's such a great piece of good news. It's such a great gospel. And so I just say to you guys, stay centered, and blessings on you.